You live? All right. Thank you all, and welcome to the first golf committee meeting in quite some time. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Closest flag is
in there, so we'll look through. There we go. Look at Frank, please, everybody.
Even better.
There you go. Well done.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I would like to mention, as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping, as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair. That would be me at the moment, prior to the start of the meeting. Hearing nothing, we will move on. I will open with public comments and announcements. Anybody from the public here would like to say anything? Fantastic, moving on. First, I would like to say thank you all for being here. We have one member who called me earlier today, and he will not be attending. He's stuck in Boston. So currently we would have 5 constituted members on this committee, and a potential 6th is sitting out here in the audience right now. We're looking forward to potentially bringing her on the committee. Why don't we just go around the room, introduce yourself briefly, and then we can get to know each other a little bit, know who's in the room. I know, Mark, you're the only one in the room right now who's on the golf committee as it's constituted right now, and has been for how many years?
Last year was the first year.
Last year was your first
Yeah.
year. Okay. So Frank, why don't you start?
Frank Wyasek. This is my first meeting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Mark Martello, sole survivor of last committee.
Kind of the sole survivor.
Kind of.
Kind of. Thank you for the humor, by the way.
Eric Clark, first meeting.
Yeah, and John Adams, or I go by Jay, first meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you. And at the end of the meeting, we can exchange phone numbers and emails. Then we can move forward from there. So there's a lot to learn as a committee member, and I'm not going to touch on most of it because I have somebody far better at it to my left than I am. But we do follow Robert's Rules of Order. So if you're not familiar with Robert's Rules, very easy to find, try to make yourself familiar with those rules, because that is how all meetings will be conducted. The first order of business on your agenda, as you can see, and we'll talk about agenda building and so forth and so on a little bit later, but the first order of business, unless Town Administrator Joe Powers would like to say anything before we launch into the second agenda item.
Simply thank you, and I'll talk a lot more later on.
Right.
Thank you.
The first order of business, and as it stands right now, I am chairing the meeting. But if I'm not mistaken, Joe, as we reorganize, then I step out of that role and the new chair takes over tonight? Is that?
So what you'll be doing is organizing. I think given the membership, that's probably the most accurate phrase right now, meaning establishing a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk. I will say, for the benefit of all of you, that any of the members absent could be named to leadership roles in absentia. Because you can always correct that or change it going forward if that were the case. However, given that select board member handler is your liaison and there is no presiding officer yet, and given that you're relying upon Robert's Rules of Order, he will preside over the election today, or the organization of a chair, vice chair, and a clerk for the committee. And then at that point, he would turn it over to the person who is either chair, or if they're not present, the vice chair. And if they're not present, to the clerk. And if they're not present, well, too many scenarios.
Yeah. So, thank you for that, Joe. And how this would work is, I believe, is I would ask Mark to be the chair, as you're the senior member in the room as it sits right now. If you are not interested in being the chair, then we would have a little bit of a different discussion. So I hate to put you on the spot, Mark, but is that something, and before you answer, let's discuss what the chair does, so we have an understanding of what the responsibilities are for the chair. and please chime in if I miss anything, which I'm sure I will. The chair presides over the meetings. That is the person that will be running the meetings. If the chair is not present, vice chair steps in. If vice chair is not present, clerk steps in. The vice chair will be mainly responsible, with the help of the rest of the committee, in creating the agenda for upcoming meetings. The chair will also be the person that I, as the liaison to the golf committee, directly deals with. And we'll talk about the role of the liaison to the committee and the role of the committee to the liaison. But to start off, the chair would be responsible for those three main things. Did I leave anything out?
No, just to say that the chair is considered the first among equals under Robert's Rules of Order, so all things go through the chair.
And what that means is, if you'd like to speak with me, it typically would go through to the chair. You guys all move as one unit. This whole committee moves as one unit. There are not 5 or 6 of you that independently do anything. This is a committee that works as a unit through the chair. So now that, Mark, you understand a little bit more about what the chair does, is it something you'd be interested in?
I've only been to maybe 4 or 5 meetings, and actually, I think Paul White has been here longer, and I think maybe he should be given the opportunity first, just from seniority.
Fantastic. I think you know what's about to happen, though. Since he's not here, I would ask you if you'd like to be vice chair. And then you'd be right back in the seat you're in right now.
Okay.
Not to say that you need to be. You and Paul are the senior members.
Sure.
So it would make sense for one of the two of you to be the chair and the other one to be the vice chair. It doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, but that's how I'm going to open.
Okay. I would take on the vice chair, I guess. I'm not all that familiar with the Roberts rules, so it would be a training session.
And we'll help you along the way. I appreciate that. So, do we need a motion, a nomination from
So,
a committee member?
you should see if there are any nominations for chair.
Okay.
There may not be. That you're still going through the act of organizing, you're meeting the requirements of the charter.
Okay.
I second the nomination for Paul to be chair.
So we took that as Mark made the nomination.
Mark
and
made the nomination.
Eric made the second.
Eric made
Yeah.
the second.
We didn't hear any objection.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0, Joe.
Aye.
Given that the chair is not present, you would still preside over the vice chair.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Next would be the vice chair. Well, actually, would be the clerk now.
I'll second him as vice chair.
Craig, you had it,
Well, I'm a little
you
confused.
nominated,
I did.
but there was no motion to nominate a vice chair.
Understood.
I'll nominate Mark for
I'll
vice chair.
second that.
We have a nomination and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Now we're legal.
Yep,
All
and
right.
you could turn it over to your vice chair to preside over the appointment of the clerk, or the election of the clerk if you wanted to.
How do you feel about that? I'll do it with you. How about that?
Okay.
All right, we're all learning here, right?
Sure.
Okay. So the next order of business would be to nominate a clerk. What the clerk's responsibilities are is simply to take the notes of every meeting and then hand those notes over in a timely fashion for posting on the website to our town clerk. Is that correct? To our town clerk. And the best way I can describe meeting minutes, easiest way to put it to you, is go take a look at the past meeting minutes. They're not extremely detailed, but if we keep in mind that everything we do here in Town Hall is for the public, and the public needs to be able to go back 7 months and see what the meeting minutes look like for December 4th of 2000 and whatever, they should be detailed enough that a person reading them would understand what went on during that meeting. So, with that said, anybody like to make a nomination for clerk? Or would anybody like to be the clerk? And then we can have someone nominate said person.
Oh, boy. Has anyone done it before? Because I have, so in prior
Okay, there
boards.
we go.
You're in.
Nominate you.
Yeah, I knew that was gonna
I
happen.
first and second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jay.
Yeah,
There we go.
you guys owe me a beer.
So now that you
You got
have,
it.
You look like you're making copious notes already. It's great.
We'll compare notes at the end. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
yes. So we have now organized. You are now the vice chair and presiding over this meeting. But I recognize that I was in your shoes maybe a year and 3 months ago. So we certainly can help you along. What I like to do is check off as you go through your agenda items. Under new business now, we check off letter A. And letter B, Vice Chair, if you would like to just clearly state the new business item B to the group.
Well, we're gonna
Right on the agenda there, yeah. Discussion,
discussion of what member is responsible for the golf committee meeting minutes. I'm sorry.
great. And we've already done that. Jay's going to do the meeting minutes and handle the meeting minutes,
Yep.
all right? So that's been satisfied. Is there anything you want to add to the meeting minutes aspect of this before we move on?
Yes, so I'm about to make a statement that's based on an assumption. If the answer is no, we're going to fake it. I assume you've all been sworn to the faithful duty of your membership on the golf committee.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
All right.
Affirmative.
So you should have also received open meeting law materials and such. That's your guide for everybody. Certainly on any questions with regard to minutes and all of that. So as the clerk of the golf committee, you would be the primary person responsible for assembling them, getting them to the chair for discussion and adoption, and then filing with the town clerk. Rely upon the open meeting law. They're not transcripts. They are meant to capture the, quote, pertinent matters that come before you. And I'll show you my notes afterwards to give you a flavor, so to speak. You all want to be mindful of you're operating in public. Everything is televised and or recorded. So you can rely upon that, but you're also held to that. And really, as liaison handler from the select board just said, you'd announce the topics. You're now having a discussion on that. You could say there was discussion on and no votes were taken. And that's sufficient.
And is Jay taking minutes as we speak?
Jay and I
Great.
are tandeming on that for sure. And then the other pertinent matter, this is not just a responsibility of the clerk of the committee, but the entire committee. You want to do timely minutes. So you do want to get into the habit, if you're meeting, say, monthly, that at every month meeting, you should be doing the minutes for the past meeting. You don't want to, and the law requires that you do it within a certain time frame.
Do you mean approving the meeting?
Correct. I apologize, yes.
That's all right.
So at your next meeting, one of your first agenda items would be to approve the minutes for this meeting.
Yep.
And so on and so forth.
Right, exactly.
Got it.
And then the clerk's office keeps those minutes in perpetuity, and they're posted on the website for everyone to see the record of what you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We would now check off letter B. And then, Mark, if you would like to open the discussion just by verbalizing it, so everyone knows what agenda item we're on.
Okay.
And keep in mind, there could be 10 or 15 people online listening to a meeting at some point, right? So it's real important to be clear and concise with what you're saying, so people
Okay.
who aren't here can follow along.
Okay. So under new business, item C is discussion of the golf committee charge.
Thank you. And I'll pick up there if you don't mind. The golf committee charge is exactly that. It states clearly what the golf committee's primary tasks and responsibilities are. The select board has tried very, very hard over the last several months to create a template for all committees, so that all committees' charges look similar. As you see, purpose, committee members, composition, operation, scope, procedure, and conduct. Just a little background on the charges. They all should operate and look the same, or close to it. So your charge that you have before you here, if you take a look at the top line there, Golf Advisory Committee, and what you all are is an advisory committee to the select board. And if we look at purpose, this is the opportunity for all of us to get on the same page, and I think that is extremely, extremely important. The golf committee is an advisory committee to the select board and shall make recommendations relating to the maintenance and operation of the municipal golf course for consideration of the select board, as per the Charter Chapter 7, Section 13, Clause 7-13-2. So what that means is you all are a conduit to the select board for public opinion. That's essentially the overall big picture of exactly what you all are going to be doing. You are the ears and the eyes of the public for the select board. And your agenda items will reflect things that are important to the public, important to the golf course, and important to the select board. And then you may get a directive from the select board saying, we want you to look into this specific idea. And then you would create an agenda with that as an item. You would hold a public meeting. You would solicit information from the public, and hopefully they show up and they give you information. And then you as a board, you as a committee, would discuss it openly in public. And you would come to an opinion. You would come to some kind of opinion of advisement that would then move through the chair to the select board by way of the liaison. So that's a 30,000 foot, kind of snapshot of exactly what you're all supposed to be doing as a golf committee member. If you look at the members in the composition, just so we understand this is important. There's 7 members on your golf committee. So what that means is 4 of you have to be present for a quorum. If there is no quorum, the meeting cannot happen. So from the chair's standpoint and then the vice chair's standpoint, it is incredibly important that if you can't make a meeting, you communicate that with the chair. Because don't forget, the public may be showing up to a meeting thinking there's going to be a meeting, and 3 of you can't make it, and there's no quorum, and everyone shows up except for the committee. Not really a good look for any committee that this town has underneath it. So, at this point, you've got 5 members. Hopefully soon there'll be a 6th. Then hopefully soon there'll be a 7th. So it does make a difference. When you've got 7 people, you've got a little bit of wiggle room. But when you have 4 people, it's important you all show. You all will sit for 3-year terms. Mark, you've got a year and a half left, something like that?
June of 26.
Yeah. The other 3 of you just got constituted, so you are 3 years. Each year the golf committee will reorganize. So just because you're a vice chair today or a chair or the clerk doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be through your 3 years. Every July 1st, I believe. July 1st? The first meeting in July?
It says the first meeting following the beginning of the fiscal year.
Right.
If for some reason you didn't meet in July, it would be August, but after June 30.
So you'll reorganize again in about a year from now. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
Well, I want to add lots.
Okay, let me roll through this and then you can do your
Perfect,
thing.
thank you, sir.
Scope and procedure. So this is one that you can drill down a little bit on, and please ask questions if you have them. The golf committee will work collaboratively with the director of golf, the select board, and the public to create agenda items that will be discussed at a public and posted meeting. The golf committee chair may request information from the director of golf or the select board liaison specific to the maintenance and operation of the golf course to assist in the discussions of the committee. The golf committee chair will provide all recommendations to the select board by way of the liaison. And lastly, conduct. The golf committee shall post meeting notices, maintain and post meeting minutes as required under open meeting law. And that would be the clerk's responsibility, Joe? Or the chair,
Immediately the clerk, but the committee.
the committee?
Meaning this doesn't single out Jay.
Right.
You're all responsible for adhering to the requirements of the open meeting law, and that includes minutes.
So that's the golf committee charge in a nutshell. Tried to make it very simple and very clean. I'll let you take over from here.
So now that it's simple and clean,
Yeah.
introduce
Now it will
Joe.
be complicated and long.
It may not be long, and I definitely don't want it to be complicated. But if you're still looking at the charge document that Select Board Member Handler, Vice Chair and Liaison, et cetera, right, just went through, I'd like you to make note of the last part of the first line under purpose. So this makes reference to the Harwich Charter, Chapter 7, specifically Section 13 for your committee. So you want to be mindful of the charter. The charter is online, easily accessible, and I happen to have relevant information here in front of me, but that is what gives you life as an organization in the town of Harwich. You are included as one of several town agencies known as a committee. When Select Board Member Handler and the Select Board, but Mr. Handler as the immediate liaison, worked on this charge, I think it's very fair to say he was mindful and motivated by the references in the charter. So be aware of Chapter 7 because it covers all appointed agencies that are appointed by the Select Board. Specifically, you want to be familiar with Section 13. However, most of what's in Section 13 is in your charge. So it's going to be repetitive and therefore pretty straightforward. If you then go to members' composition and operation, what is implied there is that statement, that two-sentence paragraph, jibes with and honors the requirements of Chapter 7, Section 2. And Chapter 7, Section 2 for appointed town agencies is called General Provisions. And then specifically under 722B, it states that this agency will elect a chair, vice chair, and a clerk. So you've done that, but that's where that's coming from. And that's how I would urge you to not worry about Robert's Rules of Order per se, because there's any number of us that can help you with that. But be mindful of the charter. It is the law of our land. Be mindful of the bylaws. Chapter 7 of the bylaws gives you your membership number. That's it. But then be aware of the charter and any other rules and regulations. The scope and procedure that are listed there were created by Select Board Member Handler and the Select Board, and it dovetails with what Section 13 talks about. So it talks specifically about the golf committee, and I think this is a great articulation of that. So that's where that comes from. And then, like I said, last but not least, that conduct statement, if that conduct statement were not present, we're all still obligated. Certainly you all, because you took oath through the town clerk to serve the town on a town committee, but any of us in municipal government are bound by the open meeting law. So that conduct statement, I think, is necessary to just remind everybody we're always under that. And that's really where the board came up with your charge. What I can talk about, but it may be something, so if you think this is the time for me to talk about you folks as a Chapter 7 committee versus me as town administrator, Chapter 4, and my staff under Chapter 5.
I do.
Thank you. So, as much as I've just lauded our charter, and our charter is well-written and better than many, there are errors, omissions, inconsistencies, and conflicts. So the greatest example of the conflict is when you read Chapter 7 and the Section 2 under General Provisions in Clause 2. At the very end of the charter, that section, it says, and this is for all committees under Chapter 7, that the town agency shall nominate prospective employees of their choice who shall be considered for appointment by the town administrator as provided in clause 442. So clause 442, the first four is chapter 4. That chapter is town administrator. The second 4 is the section, responsibilities of the administrator, section 4. And clause 2 says the town administrator shall appoint all staff. That line, that item E in 722 is in direct conflict with 442. If I were to hire a new director of golf, which I have no expectation of ever doing, and I hope to retire before Roman does, or the superintendent of golf, Sean Fernandez, or anybody else in their operation, I would not necessarily or at all look to this committee for your nominations. This is a document that built off of previous documents that go back decades. That's not to say that you don't have a voice, but you have no more or less voice than anybody here, anybody watching, or anybody that's not paying attention. And so I think it's fair to say that 3 of you are here today because we've had difficulties as a town, as a committee, and as an organization with committees vis-a-vis staff. So the simple part that I want to get to is under the charter, the select board is the executive branch. The town administrator role is the administrative branch. So we're 2/3 of the government, the third branch, town meeting, the legislature. Chapter 5 says town administration. The town administrator appointed by the select board shall hire all staff, et cetera, et cetera. So I go this deep because I've had a number of staff members, select board members, and certainly committee members saying, well then, how does this all interact? So I would argue, and I've said to staff, so my directs and some of which you'll be working with and through and for in various instances, what is not present in the charter and not necessarily in the open meeting documents and isn't really in the charge is what's implied of all of this. You are an advisory board to the select board, as we've stated. You are the first conduit to the general public. So I've been telling my team that they can rely upon, if they have a committee, as Roman has access to the golf committee, Roman can rely upon working through this public body to give notice to the public on topics that are important to him for the operation, and would look to partner with you folks to be the public body entity. As a public body, you're required to give notice in your agenda. You're required to give specificity of notice. You're required to orderly conduct meetings. You're required to give minutes. I don't have to do that as town administrator. I'm not a public body, I'm a public agent. Roman and Sean, or the golf director or the superintendent of golf, don't have to do that. But we want there to be that transparency, and that's the number one thing you can do as advisory to the select board and aiding administration and staff. So a scenario could be, did you get that for you? Thank you. A scenario may be the director of golf is contemplating a change in operation, a change in policy, some sort of change. Our model, current select board and current town administrator, isn't for him to just do that by fiat. We want there to be public discourse and everything else. So Roman might say, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have a topic on your agenda, working through you to ask the public their thoughts on XYZ topic. That's the value statement. Now, I will put out an apology if that doesn't sound jazzy enough or sexy enough, because I happen to think that municipal government is sexy, sadly, but that's the criticality of it. You are the conduit between the general public in a formalized manner where records are kept forever. You advise the select board as they ask, you aid staff as they ask, and we all work towards really the ultimate goal, as many folks here and here have heard, to get things passed at town meeting in the spring. So for me, even though I've said in the past, I don't walk away from it, but I've been asked, Mr. Administrator, what do you think of Chapter 7? And I say not much. Town administration does not intersect directly with Chapter 7. That's the select board. But that's not to say I don't see value. There is tremendous value in all of the committees under Chapter 7 to aid and assist and work with and for the benefit of staff and the town. I hope that helps, and I'm going to refine that and keep peddling that as I go around town.
I think that was fantastic. Is there any questions? Okay. I think to make life easy for all of us, as Joe alluded to, the procedure and the protocol of how you operate is incredibly important. Going to the director of golf and telling him that you don't think the air conditioner is working properly and it's a good idea if he went and bought a new one is definitely not part of what this committee is intended to do. Phone calls from each committee member to me telling me what they're thinking and what they want and how they see the golf course operating is, again, not how this committee or any committee should function. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if the director of golf is not the only person who can give you agenda items. Would that be fair?
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yep.
The select board can also give you agenda items to discuss and go to the public and have a meeting, right? If you just remember that everything that's on this agenda is germane for the public to know and understand and weigh in on. You can also develop your own agendas. I'm going to look to you for a little help on this one, right?
Sure.
If there's something that there will be a staff person, whether it's Joe or Roman, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? At most of your meetings. Fair?
Correct. The beneficial thing is for the director of golf to be present and to working with all you. And Roman would be here tonight, except I said this isn't the meeting that he should be part of.
And part
Absolutely
of,
right.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the what I find to be tremendous value to having the director of golf at your meetings giving a monthly update on the golf course. Revenue, rounds played, future plans, future problems that he's going to solve. And this committee would listen as well as the public. And this committee then could ask Roman questions, and Roman can ask the committee questions. And out of that dialogue, a new agenda item could emerge.
And I would
Please.
add, and the public, through the committee and through the chair, could ask questions.
That's right.
That's why you have a discussion in public, the director's here in public, the community, as the chair and you allow it, would do that discussion. But it's the public through the committee to anyone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and as a very simple example to this, if you had a meeting today that was discussing the potential future bunker renovations, and you had a discussion about it, no votes were taken, you were going to table it and move forward to the next meeting and have that be another agenda item, two things come to mind real quick about that. Two of you can have conversations about it, but 3, 4, 5, and 6 of you cannot outside of this public meeting.
And we don't
Please.
recommend that even 2 of you have that, generally speaking.
Correct. That's number one. And number two, public comment at your next meeting, as we opened with public comment, the public would have the right to stand up prior to you all engaging in your agenda and say their piece about things that you have talked about in the past or things that they would like looked at for the future. So with that being said, the golf committee charge pretty clear to everybody here?
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions?
So as we're getting ourselves organized, do we have the ability to go into an executive session so we can have a conversation that doesn't have to, while we're figuring out how to operate?
Most likely, no.
Okay.
In your open meeting law materials, there is a section that talks about the 10 topics that allow you to go into executive session. But if, really the ones that we see most often relate to personnel, you would not be able to use that. They're not your personnel. So there are rare instances where you could do that, but unfortunately, or some would argue fortunately, the vast majority of your deliberations are public
Mhm.
and recorded, and we own them for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, and honestly, I get that. I'm not trying to
No,
I'm just trying
it's
to
an excellent question. and-
figure out how to operate here. It's-
And I think it also gets to, I'm sure most, if not all of you, have years of experience in the real world and the private sector. You're in municipal government now, it looks nothing like that. And that's, that's how we roll, so to speak. If there were instances for executive session, your liaison would know about it. I would certainly know about it. And if you think there's a need for it, work with staff, and staff will work with me to make sure we're documenting it properly. But generally speaking, no. If you see the select board where they do it regularly, if you look at the topics, they're either strategizing for negotiations, they're strategizing for purchases, and things of that nature, most of which would not come to an advisory committee. But it is a great question, and it's fair for you to ask.
Is there any level of intake process that needs to be observed? So, because we have to have an open public discussion, fine, that's the rule. But I go play golf, some member of the people I'm playing with says, hey, how about blah, blah, blah. That'd be a good thing for you to talk about at the committee. Okay, so the public has basically provided me a piece of information that potentially can carry forward, right?
Absolutely correct.
Is there a process there around that in terms of how do I capture that? How do I make sure that it's transparent to what's happening?
This is excellent, and as long as no one here is in your foursome, right?
Right.
And it's people that are completely unrelated to the committee, that's gonna happen to you at the golf course, at the bank, at the supermarket, and sometimes when you don't want it to. But that is your role. You are the conduit to the public. And so, excellent question, and I like the phraseology, it reminds me of my days in the real world. The intake process, what you could do is you could do, as an example, an email to the chair to simply say, I heard this and I think we should talk about it.
Okay.
There shouldn't be a dialogue, that's serial deliberation. Or you could bring it up at the next meeting if you have certainly public comment. Say, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I think we should talk about this at our next meeting because here's what I'm hearing. However, as Mr. Handler has said, if you're hearing scuttlebutt on the golf course about the starter or a maintenance guy or anybody else, I defer to Mr. Handler as to how he thinks that should be handled. I have my own preferences.
Oh, I'm going to Mark. Nice try, though.
And I thought I heard tag, you're it. But that's where you need to be a little bit more circumspect and careful, because then you're dealing with personnel rights and things of that nature.
Right, exactly.
But to your overall point, you are here for golf committee. So when you're out in the real world, including golf, people are going to look to you, and that's what we would expect.
And if I could ask one more question, I know I'm kind of monopolizing these questions, but is there like an email for the golf committee that the public can send? Hey, they're not seeing us for whatever reason. Is there a collection box? Is there, here's an idea for you. Is there anything like that?
I was looking at you because it's teed up for you, no pun intended.
So we are in the process of, for all of our committees, creating, I believe it's called a catch-all,
Right.
right? A catch-all email, so that you're not emailing people from your private email.
Right,
You're not
exactly.
emailing your, right?
That's what I'm trying
And
to
it would
avoid.
all end up for the chair to see and deal with. So we're in the process of that right now for all committees.
Okay, great.
In the meantime, you could email, like I said, the chair, leave it at that. You could certainly reach out to administration. We get that all the time. What we usually get is, hey, I want the personal email address of a golf committee member. And our response is, certainly, no. We're going to communicate with that golf committee member. We're going to be the conduit so that we're not giving up your personal information. So there's any number of ways that you can record the information, so to speak. You can always rely upon my team, so certainly Roman, administration, your liaison. I want to make sure this is captured. Until we have those identities, and real quick, the email addresses are going to be very ordinary. We envision something where it's golf committee chair, golf committee vice chair, golf committee clerk, golf committee member 3, golf committee member 4, 5, 6, 7, and You get them alphabetically, and when you're gone, it goes back to the next person. But the point on that is to protect you, because you're willing to give service to the town. You're not exposing anything in your personal life or greatly reducing any exposure in your personal life. So that if there are public records requests, we handle that because we can rely upon that email.
Makes total sense.
And we're hoping to roll that out this year for certain. I'm hoping certainly by second quarter of the fiscal year, so the fall. I hope that helps and answers.
Yeah, it does. It does. I can tell you from my personal experience, I've set up an email for a prior board that I was on. That's all I use that
Yeah,
for.
absolutely, yeah.
And just for that reason.
Sure.
If somebody legally needed to see it, or I left, I could pass on the entire
Precisely.
contents.
Yep.
I would just like to add one thing to the charge topic, because we're dealing with agenda items and how to build them and how to move through them. Part of the chair's responsibility is to keep the meeting on track with the agenda. It can go like this really quickly, right? And that's exactly why these agendas are going to be in front of all of you prior to every meeting. I would also like to mention that it's not, I think I did mention already, it's not the chair's responsibility to just build the agenda. It can come, as Joe said, from, a committee member that heard something on the golf course. This is the way that your agendas are going to be built. But try really hard to stay on track with the agenda that's put in front of you for each meeting. You'll have an opportunity, as Joe said at the beginning of your meeting at public comment, to say, I would like this potentially for a future agenda item. So that's really all I have to say about that. Does anybody have any other questions before we move? All right, let's check off letter C. And if the vice chair would like to bring us to D.
Sure. New business D is a discussion and vote on golf committee meeting schedule.
So this one, I've heard a lot of different thoughts and ideas on this. I believe the golf committee used to meet on the third Wednesday or third Tuesday of every month at a certain time, maybe 6 o'clock. It's for all of you to decide what works best. I'm also told that during the winter months, help me with this, show, like December, January, and February, maybe the golf committee didn't meet. It is not imperative that you meet 12 times a year. It's not imperative that you have a monthly meeting. There might be 2 months where there really is nothing to talk about or to go over or to do. But that would be for you all to decide. I feel that as a minimum, you should meet 9 times a year. And there's no reason you can't meet more. It just has to follow the posting rules. You have to get it, 3 days, 3 business days?
48 business hours, so.
48 business hours. If something came up and you wanted to have another meeting 2 weeks after your last meeting, you just have to make sure you post it at the right time, which is 48 hours, business hours ahead of time. But staff will help you with all of that, and I'll help you with all of that, and Joe will probably help me with all of that, so.
And it's in the OML materials.
Correct,
Yep.
correct. It's in your open meeting law materials. So this is the time for you to have a discussion as to how often, minimally, you think you should all meet. And I'll let you have that discussion now.
So no matter like what the topics are and how often you need to meet, right? Like,
Yeah. I agree that maybe in the winter time it's not quite as important around the holidays.
I think 9 times is a reasonable amount. Does it have, it can be any time? Is this something that's available even mornings?
It's,
That could be
it would be up to all of you to determine
Right.
what's best, and you may come to no decision tonight and wait until the rest of your group is here,
Yeah.
which is okay, and you can just
Probably we should.
table that right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're only half of us here.
Yeah.
Right.
should probably-
And my only request would be not to do it the same night as Music in the Port.
Right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's preferred it's not on Wednesday nights either.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If I could just offer, there's no restriction in your charge or anything else, so you get to pick the day and time that works best for you. However, You want to be mindful that the town expects these meetings to be conducted where there can be recording, go-to-meeting going forward if there's a remote need. So you can rely upon the small conference room here in the town hall, the Griffin room if available. The clerk would probably work with the administration staff. We keep the calendars, so we could tell you availabilities. And Jamie Goodwin, Caleb Ledoux, and the team at Harwich Channel can also tell you rooms that are equipped for recording access, if you will. We typically frown upon if the buildings are closed normally, meaning weekends and holidays. You should not meet in those opportunities. And you do want to do it at times that are certainly conducive to you folks as the golf committee, but you want to offer some availability to the general public.
These guys don't look like a December 25th meeting group, but I will say, I think it is important for two things. One, the public to be able to expect your meetings, and that's why you pick the third Thursday of every month at 5 p.m. here in this small room, so that the public has an expectation that that's what you're going to do.
Does it make more sense to do it later in the day for the public?
I know.
I agree, I'd love to do it earlier, but,
I know way back the golf committee used to meet at 10 a.m. in the morning.
so it doesn't,
Yeah.
okay.
You always want to pick a date where there's going to be a quorum of the golf committee.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the public can show up, but you can't, there's no meeting.
Doesn't go anywhere.
And that was my second point, is you should all come to a consensus of what's going to work best for all of you most of the time.
Can we, in terms of how long a meeting goes, right, I assume it's a public meeting, there is no time frame, so to speak. But for me, working full-time, I would have some challenges in making morning meetings. Not that I'm opposed to it, but if I knew I'll block this 2-hour time frame out, I could be here for that. So I just put that out there.
I think you should be able to get through most of your agendas in less than 2 hours. I've looked at all the golf committee meetings on Channel 18 for the last 3 years. The majority of them are an hour to an hour and 15 minutes tops. Some of them went a little longer because a lot of the public came in for a hot topic. So I think we've just decided on one of the first agenda items for the next meeting, right, is we're going to push the scheduling part to the next meeting. Does that sound
Yes.
fair?
That's fair. Yeah.
Can we throw out some timeframes just so we can have that as a suggested date?
Whatever you want.
So,
I mean, it always was Tuesdays at, was it 5 o'clock? Is that what
Okay.
time we used to meet? So,
but it doesn't, so we could do like, a couple of months, maybe the summer months or whatever, at a different time, and then the winter, I'm open, I don't want to restrict you guys who can make it earlier.
it has to be fair to the public too. I think they're more
I
available.
completely
They're available
agree.
at 5 o'clock versus 10 o'clock in the morning. It's,
10 o'clock in the morning is not going to work. Not
I,
during the week, not for me at least right now.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
I would also say that availability for the public, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, is
probably pretty
definitely
good, right?
better.
Okay.
Tuesday at 5?
Tuesdays or Wednesdays at 5 is probably, that's not a, I mean, we all made it to this anyways, except for.
Yeah, Tuesday, I would go with Tuesdays
Same.
only because of the stroll, so.
That's,
I mean, it's an opportunity to meet people, come on. Let's look at it that way.
there you go. Yeah, I mean, on Tuesdays at 5, you
Tuesdays
can
at
try
5.
it. If it
Tuesdays
doesn't
at
work, then
5,
we can
if that
always move
works.
it, right?
So we're
You
gonna
could
suggest.
Write that down, and then when
Yeah.
everybody's here, you could
Yeah.
pitch it.
yeah.
So not every Tuesday at 5. It
No,
would
no.
be the first, second, third, fourth Tuesday at 5 of the
I'd
month.
say second, probably.
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday?
First is going to be tough for me.
And the plan to meet 9 times, so we'd also have to decide which months
Where to
we
cut
might,
it.
we might not want
Sure.
to. right?
And I think the next agenda item will give a little clarity to that. So I've got to run in 3 minutes here, and so do you.
I will advise the administration team tomorrow morning that you're looking to do Tuesdays, or the second
Second
Tuesday. at
Tuesday.
5.
Tuesday.
The second Tuesday in August then would be the 13th?
Yep.
So we can shoot for that for your next meeting if that works.
Yeah, I'm
And
actually
then
open.
Jay, I can reach out to you as clerk to let you know what the status is of those, what meeting rooms are available, et cetera. Okay?
Okay.
What's that, is that the 13th?
13th,
Yeah,
yes.
as of right now, that's actually good for me.
So that, would we have, would it be reasonable expectation to have Roman there for that one?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So the director of golf will attend that meeting, and then you'll get back into the flow of, Mark, how you probably remember it being, where Roman gives a narrative on where, you know, on all things golf.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away because I need to
Yeah, I'll
make
be
sure
out
you're
in
hearing.
2 minutes.
But it also, this is a great opportunity for you to now note the time and the next topics generally. And you also want to make note of who made the motion to adjourn, who seconded it, and at what time. And then when I follow up with you, I'll find you, we have ways. I'll tell you what I have for notes, et cetera.
Okay.
Excellent.
But as I leave, thank you very much. Truly appreciate you folks willing to serve here tonight, and we
I'll be
look
right
forward
over.
to working with you all. So thanks again for your service to our town.
Yeah, I'll be right over.
And
Thank you.
then
Yep.
somebody has to hit stop record when you're all done.
Yes. So before I leave, we have a dog hearing that we have to go to at 6. Tonight's meeting was, and I'm a little off topic here, but tonight's meeting I think was real profitable. I think everybody has a better idea of what to expect. Tonight's meeting was a little willy-nilly, kind of freewheeling with respect to being recognized to speak. And to hold a real good meeting, the chair will recognize who's speaking. The chair will recognize the public to speak versus open, free dialogue like we typically have when we're at the Seal Pub, right? So it has to be a little tighter. It has to follow the agenda. Discussion, so letter E, discussion on topics for next meeting. You'll have Roman, and Roman will give you some real good information. And that might be one of the only 2 things that you discuss at your next meeting. The second item would potentially be confirm the date and the times of your next 9 meetings. Okay?
Yep.
So I'll leave you all with that unless you have any questions for me before I go. And then if not, the next step for you all would be to adjourn the meeting, right? Someone would make a motion to adjourn. The chair can't do it. The presiding vice chair can't do it.
I'll motion to adjourn.
You could certainly ask for a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that
needs a
motion.
second, and then you would say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
4-0. The only thing I'd add to that
You're
is if we're
natural.
on go-to-meeting, you have to take a roll call vote, okay, on an adjournment.
Okay.
Because, you know,
They don't.
they can't hear you, really.
Got it.
Okay? So thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Oh. How do we stop the recording?
Push the button.
Share some
Emails?
emails, yeah. Phone numbers, emails, whatever.